Welcome to the Minnesota Environmental Quality Board's webinar series, Environmental Review 101. My name is Sarah Larrell, and I'm a program administrator for the environmental review team here at EQB. Today, we welcome Jim Drake, a Natural Heritage Review Specialist at Minnesota Department of Natural Resources, for an overview and tutorial of the Minnesota Conservation Explorer and the Natural Heritage Information System. Before we turn it over to Jim, I would like to take a moment to address a few basic facts about the webinar. To participate today, know that this webinar is being recorded. At any time, you can place comments or questions in our chat. After the presentation, you can raise your hand to verbally ask a question, and know that when questions are coming in, we will alternate between reading the chat and unmuting individuals to ask their questions. At this time, I'd like to ask members of EQB's environmental review team to introduce themselves as well. Again, my name is Sarah Larrell, and I'm a program administrator here. And we will take a minute and start with Kayla for introductions.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Kayla Walsh, and I've been at EQB about 3 years and make up part of our environmental review team here. And I'll pass it over to Jesse.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Jesse Kurzensky. I'm the director of the environment review team here at EQB. I've also been here around 3 years, the same as Kayla. Nice to have you all here today. And I'll turn it over to our newest member to say hello. Sophia, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia Muzak, and I have been here for just about 2 weeks, and I am the Technical Assistance Administrator with the Environmental Review Program. So happy to be here. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks, Sophia. Welcome. We'll head back over to our slideshow. And a little bit of general information about the EQB. The Minnesota Environmental Quality Board serves as a forum for leadership and coordination on environmental issues. Our mission is to support informed decision-making that protects and enhances Minnesota's environmental quality. We accomplish this mission by fostering meaningful conversations, supporting collaborative policy and program development, and ensuring effective environmental review of potentially impactful projects. The EQB is an 18-member board that includes state agency leaders, the commissioners of agencies, and public members from each of Minnesota's 8 congressional districts. We have a 9-member staff, which includes our executive director, Catherine Neuschler. The Environmental Quality Board promotes strategic interaction of multiple state agencies, and it serves as a forum for the public to engage in environmental decision-making. Importantly for our webinar series, the EQB functions as the coordinating body for Minnesota's environmental review program. We take a look here at our statutory authority. It was established in Minnesota Statute 116C, which created the board, and then Minnesota Statute 116D, the Minnesota Environmental Policy Act, which gives the board the authority to adopt rules. And then the rules themselves are found in Minnesota Rules Chapter 4410. So the implementing rules are there, and we will be referring to those a lot today and in every one of our environmental review 101s. As a reminder, environmental review is a process that gathers information to inform permits and project decisions. It does require a public process, and during environmental review in the public process, it does place a moratorium on the construction of a project and any governmental decisions about a project until it is complete. The workhorse of the environmental review program is the environmental assessment worksheet, or the EAW. The EAW lays out the basic facts of a proposed project to determine if it has the potential for significant environmental effects. The form contains 22 standard questions to elicit information about the project and any potential environmental effects on a broad range of items, from climate to various land and water resources, even the project's potential to create waste and more. The ultimate project, or the ultimate goal of the EAW, is to assist in determining if a proposed project will require more environmental review through an environmental impact statement. On the environmental assessment worksheet, question 14 in particular addresses the fish, wildlife, plant communities, and sensitive ecological resources or rare features. This question in some version or the other has been a part of the EAW form since the very beginning when the form was developed in the 1970s. Summarizing, the question asks to describe fish and wildlife resources as well as habitats and vegetation. It requires the RGU to describe rare features and asks to attach the Natural Heritage Review letter. It asks to discuss how those features may be affected by the project, and then to identify measures that will be taken to avoid, minimize, or mitigate any adverse effects. The state of Minnesota provides both public and non-public information for practitioners to inform their answers to this question. With us today is Jim Drake from the Department of Natural Resources. Jim works as a Natural Heritage Review Specialist for the DNR in St. Paul. He performs natural heritage reviews of potential development projects. He helps to prepare documentation and trainings on the Natural Heritage Review process. Jim coordinates license agreements for the delivery of the non-public data and assists Minnesota Conservation Explorer users when they have problems. He's been in this role for 4 years, and prior to that, Jim worked as a vegetation ecologist, as a consultant, and some time in the nonprofit world as well. I want to provide a warm welcome to Jim Drake. Jim, I'm going to stop sharing and turn it over to you. Thanks for being here today.
Yeah, hello everyone. So yes, as excuse me, as Sarah said, I'm going to be talking about Minnesota Conservation Explorer, or MCE, as I'll almost always refer to it, and the Natural Heritage Information System, and with the focus on how these might relate to an EAWs, particularly item 14. So just a couple of stage setting slides here to bring some things up to the fore of our minds. A Natural Heritage Review includes several data sets in the Natural Heritage Information System. It's not just rare species. That's the big one. That's the one that most of us think about. It's the one that has, you know, a law tied specifically to it. But there are several other data sets as well. And that's one thing that I'll be covering in this. And of course, there are many reasons to request a Natural Heritage Review. It could be needed for a permit. Developers may be performing due diligence. And then again, of course, the one that we're kind of tying to today is that the EAW form prompts the user for a review. So Sarah showed this, but just before we get into MCE, I wanted to bring it back up again. So you can be thinking about how MCE and the Natural Heritage Review process might help you to fill this out or inform the way you're going to answer these. In particular, I think the Natural Heritage Review relates most closely to 14B, C, and D, sort of to A, but that's a little more general often. But B, again, asks for a description of the rare features, which you'll be seeing in a few minutes on native plant communities, MBS site, Minnesota Biological Survey sites of biodiversity significance, any other ecological resources that are within or close to the project area. And then C asks to discuss how those things may be impacted. And D is identify measures that will be taken to avoid, minimize, or mitigate the adverse effects. So hopefully in the next 35 minutes or so, you'll see how these tools might help you relate to this, answering these questions in this item. So to get into Minnesota Conservation Explorer, it's a website. It's the way that at least to my understanding, the vast majority of people interact with natural heritage data. There are other ways to get it through. You can go through download GIS data and other things, but most people, I think, come here to MCE either to get the data or to submit a natural heritage review request. So Minnesota Conservation Explorer has 3 main functions. First one, we call it conservation planning. This is a free service. All users can access public NHIS data. We'll go through several of the layers that are in there. But again, this is free. Anyone can look at this. You don't need to even log in. When I'm demonstrating this in a few minutes, I won't log in. I'll just go to the website and start, pulling up layers. There is non-public data access. So this is only available to trained DNR staff or to external licensees. So if you're not in the DNR, your organization needs to sign a contract with the DNR saying you're going to, keep the data non-public, not share it or anything. And then if you're not in a governmental entity, a city, state, agency, whatever, there is a cost to that. It's per county, and it ranges from about $400 up to close to $4,000 if you want the whole state. So that's if your organization really wants to get a look at the non-public data, which is basically rare species, there is a way to do that. And then finally, MCE allows for the natural heritage review submissions. Through this, registered users can request a review, and within about 5 to 10 minutes, you'll get an automated response. It may be, we'll cover what those are in a little more detail, but it may be the natural heritage review letter is in that response, or it may be that you need further review, but you'll get some kind of response in a few minutes. And about 60% of requests need further review by people here, but a little bit of simple math tells us that means about 40% of people get their review letter in less than 10 minutes. EAWs, I'd say, is a little bit less than that because they tend to be a little more, complicated, a little bit bigger, whatever, than the average request. But I've seen many EAWs that also can go through. So if you're a bit lucky, you might get your response in 10 minutes. Otherwise, it goes to manual review. All right, so we will get into looking at MCE. Again, this is available to all users. You don't need a GIS, you don't need ARC or QGIS or anything. This MCE is basically a simple GIS. And so anybody can jump in here and start looking around. The layers are updated approximately quarterly. I'm going to shift over to demonstrate MCE. So you'll see I'm not logged in up here, just come straight to the website. We can go hit on explore. That's how you want to get to start looking at things. And a couple things before I get into the layers. There are, sorry, I'm trying to move the little Teams notification here. Okay. You'll see a couple basic things. You can do some basic measurements. There's a scale, anything that you might want to, figure distance. There's a pretty good search function, but I'm going to do a little bit of an example just west of Sartell. There's some stuff that should have several of the layers we're interested in. All right. First thing we'll start in is defining an area of interest. So there are several ways you can do that. You can obviously just look without an area of interest, but if you have a project area and you know what it is, you can draw it on the map. You can, selecting from layers is pretty uncommon. That's sort of a more advanced way to get into this. Or you can upload it. You can upload shape files, KMZs, just a little bit of information here. You can see what the options are. They can't be too big, but you can upload if you have a GIS or even just generate a KMZ file. I am just going to draw on the map here. Sartell, there we go. So I just click on this. I'm going to say this is our area of interest. All right. You immediately get an option for a conservation planning report, which is something I'll go into in more detail. I'm going to click on that just to get it going. Enter button there by accident. So I just want to get this working in the background, but we'll go back to here and start looking at some of the layers. There we go, layers. You'll see all the options here. Again, you'll note since I'm not logged in, I don't have special permissions. I cannot see the rare species, but you still have a whole bunch of layers here. And we'll work through, I think, some of the ones that are maybe a little bit more likely to be useful. Let's start with, for instance, DNR management units. So land owned and managed by the DNR. I turn that layer on with these little eyeball, either open or closed. You'll see there's a purple shaded polygon right next to here. You can figure out what that is in a couple of ways. There's always an option with the legend. So we look over here. It's a purple, scientific and natural area. You can also, for all of these things, just click on it. Again, this is a simple GIS, so it's got an identify feature and calls up the name. It's, again, an SNA. It's got links. If you wanted to go there and look more about the SNA for any reason, you've got the option there. But I just want to know that, okay, there's a DNR managed land right across the street on this western boundary. And before we get into more layers, a little bit more about some of these. Many of these will have some kind of layer description. So you can open it up, tells you a little bit about the layer. There are a lot of links to more information. You'll probably never be able to click all the links that are available through this or the conservation planning report or something. We've tried to tie a lot of information in case if you want to dig deeply into something, hopefully you can go as deep as you want to. There are a few layers that don't, like DOT roads. There's nothing, it's just the roads are there. But most of these things do have links to more information, metadata, that kind of thing. Let's see, got a few notes here, things I want to cover. All right. So we've got DNR lands are here. Another thing that might be interesting to cover or to be aware of, we've got public waters. So is there public water? Yes, there's one going right through. So again, that might be relevant. Maybe not so much for the EAW, but might be relevant for you getting any permits you need or knowing that, again, this is public water. You can, as before, you can always click on it and it calls up the Kittle number or whatever. If you need to talk to a hydro or whatever person you have to talk to, there's some information identifying this thing. Turn some of these off so they don't get too complicated, too messy here. We've got MBS sites and DNR native plant communities. So again, these kind of relate to some of those EAW questions or the items in there. Can help you identify any native plant communities that are nearby that have been mapped. There are, again, within that SNA, there's some mapped areas here. You've got green and gray. I want to figure out what those are. Legend, you can access that up here. Green means S1 through S3. Those are rare. They have a certain rarity ranking in the state. The gray ones are not as rare. So again, those might help you in identifying information you want to put into your EAW. The MBS sites, you can open that up. Again, this area is clearly popping up with a lot of rare features or natural features in it. This SNA, it's got it ranked as an outstanding MBS site of biodiversity significance. It's got mapped native plant communities. So there's a lot going on here in terms of rare features. If we want to see more than one thing, we can play with the opacity so you can see the relationship of the MBS site to the mapped native plant communities. And again, no surprise, but there's a large degree of overlap here. Bring this up a little bit here. Getting away from rare resources, we can also look at a few things like just wetlands. So this is not going to give you the level of wetland detail that like an actual wetland delineation would, but it gives you an idea of where wetlands that have been identified by NWI are on the map. And so you can see that the eastern kind of half of this, third of this area has a fair number of wetlands. And then this SNA over here also has a lot of wetlands. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these, but there are a number of other layers you might be interested in looking at for either the EAW or just generally to understand what's going on here in terms of rare or sorry, for natural features. One last thing I'm going to point out is calcareous fens are also here. Again, this is all public information. You don't need that license. You don't need to be logged in. But calcareous fens that may have some regulatory impact or be regulated depending on how your project might impact them. You can see where they are. And this one is a couple miles away, a little more than a mile maybe. Depending on what you're doing here, there may or may not be an impact here, but it does tell you again where they are. And you can click on it again. If you ever wanted to talk to Keeler or somebody in the DNR about the fens, you've got a name, you can tell them, you've got a number, you can tell them, and you can talk about whether there are potential impacts from your project. If you had that license I mentioned earlier, there would also be the observations of rare species, threatened, endangered, and species of special concern. Again, I don't have that in this login, and well, I couldn't be showing it to the whole group anyway because don't all have licenses. But you could then see on your own, are there observations of rare species within this or nearby? And then start planning your project based on that. All right, so that's kind of a quick overview of MCE, some of the layers available. There's a lot I didn't go into. You can do searching. There's some basic GIS search functions in here. You could use your project area, give it a 1 mile buffer or whatever buffer you want, and say, tell me all of the MBS sites of biodiversity significance that are in there, or tell me all of the native plant communities that are in there. That's something, again, I'll leave that for people to play around with or a little more advanced work, but those features are available. You can also create tables of these things and export them. So again, it's not just looking at the map. You can do some export and some, again, basic search functions as well. That will segue us into the conservation planning report. So the conservation planning report does some of what I was just saying automatically. We've got some predefined search distances. Each layer has a predefined distance. These cannot be modified by users, so you're kind of stuck with what we've got. But it does tell you what they are. And then taking your area of interest, that one that I drew, MCE will search within that radius and give you tables of all of the hits. So MBS sites of biodiversity significance, there were those two. There was that one outstanding right across to the west, and there was a moderate ranked one that was, I didn't look at it, but it was just to the south there. DNR native plant communities, again, they'll tell you all of the plant communities within 330 feet. You've got links if you want to dig into details of what these are. There's a lot more information on the ecology, the species that might be there, both common and rare. Again, these can help you to answer 14, maybe A or B about rare species or rare communities, as well as just general habitat nearby, fish and wildlife habitat. Calcareous fens are in here. Old growth stands, we don't have any of these, but all these layers are searched by MCE. You do lose that spatial relationship. It just gives you a table. It doesn't tell you where. And so you have to look at the actual website again to say, where it is in relation to your potential project area. But you get a list of all of these layers and then a little map of the area you selected. All right. Oh, one thing, I guess, that map comes in just with the basic topographic background. One thing I did mention is you can play with the base map. So there's several options. You can have imagery if you wanted to, especially if you're zoomed in, maybe that's useful, streets, whatever. There's a number of different layers you can use as a base map. So that's a conservation planning report. Again, all of these have links to them for more information, but I am going to go to our natural heritage review stuff. And I'm going to go back to the slideshow for that. So I just had backup slides in case we didn't have success logging in? Okay. So a natural heritage review is begun the same way as that conservation planning report. Couple differences: you need to be logged in with an account. The accounts are free. The natural heritage review is not free. There's a fee with that. The fee is $120 for submitting your review and up to an hour of manual review time. After that, it's $60 per half hour for reviews. I know some people get worried, like that sounds very open-ended. I can say, having been involved or been around, we've done about 3,000 of these. I would guess 2/3, maybe a little bit more, are done for that $120. And I have never seen one of the 3,000 that is over $720. Not to say it couldn't happen if there was some really big, complicated project, but that's the general range. And most of them are going to skew to the left, so for the lower amounts. Again, to get this review started, you have to be logged in. You draw an area or use a zipped shapefile, just like for that conservation planning report. If you're logged in, you're going to have this other button available for a natural heritage review. Click on that. It will ask you for quite a bit more information, not just a title like for the conservation planning report, but we want to know more what this is for and what potential impacts are. So, I've said this is for formal environmental review. It's for a state EAW. I've just decided this is for a mixed use development. And then here is where I'm going to spend a little time giving some tips for how to get the most focused and precise review. Some people send in review requests and there's a sentence or a phrase or even like a TBD in here. And I know sometimes that's all you've got. Your project's really early. You're just kind of feeling what's out there in terms of natural heritage, and that's fine. But I'll just say that if you give us very little information, we have to presume that anything might happen. You might be mass grading and paving the whole site. You might be, putting in a solar farm, who knows what. If you can give us more information about what's going to be in there, maybe areas that are going to be developed. It's a housing development, but like in that first area I defined, let's say that eastern third where there's a bunch of wetlands, we're going to leave that as a park or a nature reserve. Then we can start tailoring our review and say, okay, well, that's going to be less impacted. We don't have to maybe think about certain avoidance measures for that area. Whereas if that area is going to be mass graded, we might have some other things. So you'll get a more, again, tailored and precise letter for your project if you can give us a fair amount of information. Maybe I'd suggest not paragraphs and paragraphs. That'll take us a lot of time. It'll make it cost more, and it's maybe not always useful. But try to find that, some information, enough we can figure out what's going on, but not so much that it might take us 30 or 40 minutes to read through everything. And then another key thing is when you're filling in all the information, you can get to the page and you can select draft. If you've got a project, you're not quite ready to submit it for the review, but you kind of want to get everything ready for it. You can keep it in draft form. That's totally fine. You can leave it there time. I will say that some people sometimes do that and then they forget, and 2 or 3 months later they come back and they say, is my review done? And we'll say, no, it hasn't popped up in the queue for review because it's in draft form. You have to make sure to hit final, and then that puts it into the queue for review. And then we'll get to it when it comes to its turn. If you do leave it in draft form too, you don't join the line until you hit final. So you might miss that month or 2 or 3 of it just sitting there. So be sure that when you're ready for it to be reviewed, you put it into final form. Actually, I guess that's a good time to mention when you're submitting these, we are the best way to work with us is for early coordination. Our review times for manual reviews, if it's automated one, again, 10 minutes, you get your letter. If it goes to manual review, right now we're at 4 to 5 weeks, and that's about as low as we've been for a while. We've got 2 people, we get about 1,000 requests a year. If something kind of slows us down for a minute, it can be up to 2 months or even more. So try to submit this pretty far ahead of time. so you're not rushing. You know, if you're a week ahead of time when you want to be groundbreaking, that's probably going to be an issue, and you're going to struggle to get your review on time. Once you submit your review request, you'll get a page like this in MCE. You will see all of your projects here. You'll see the submit status. These are all in draft. Again, they won't be reviewed until they're final. And then there'll be a workflow status that'll tell you if they're in queue, in progress, or they've been finished. All right, so now a little bit of time on the Natural Heritage Review results. The results you'll get are one of three things. Two of them are the automated review letters, and you'll get those quickly. The letter will be part of the report. It can be a little confusing because if you get a manual review, you get a separate document that's the letter. If you get an automated review, if it goes through that, it doesn't have any flags that send it to manual review, the letter is part of the report. So a little confusing, you know, hopefully you can keep that in mind as you're working with these. But the three options you might get is no comments, comments or standard comments you might hear, and then needs further review. And I'll go a little bit more into these. So a no comments means that MCE did its search around your potential project area, and there were no hits. This table here in the center here, all of these different categories have no comments, no further review required. So there was nothing in NHIS that, well, merited a comment. So you just get a letter saying we don't believe there will be any impacts to known, rare features. The second letter you might get, again, this will come in the report from MCE starting on page 2. You'll get a comments, or what we call standard comments often, and that means there is something in that predefined standard search area that is that's flagged, but it's not. It's probably not a rare species. So that's what 90% of the time, that's what flags them for manual review. So in this example, looking at this table in the middle, you see no comments. Oh, the second one, ecologically significant areas, has a comment. There's an MBS site nearby. We've got some standard recommendations for things to minimize or avoid impacts to that. These are not regulated by law. MBS sites by themselves are not. They may relate to WACA and things, but the MBS site by itself is not regulated by law. So these are recommendations, things that we hope that people can keep in consideration. These are important ecological areas, but again, just recommendations. And I'll show some of these in a minute, some of the standard ones. And then our third one that you might get is the manual review. So in this case, you've got something has been flagged for manual review. It needs to come to my colleague or I. It's usually a state listed endangered or threatened species, but it may be something else. And it will be put in queue. Again, we'll get to it in the 4 to 8 weeks usually. And we will look at your project details. We will look at the NHIS layers we have available, plus other information we have, and try to determine potential impacts from the project. And then you'll get a separate document, a separate letter that will be sent to you listing those potential impacts and some avoidance or mitigation measures, or minimization measures, sorry. So with that all in mind, the things I just went through, the MCE, the different layers it's got, the NH review requests and letters you might get. Again, I just want to bring back up to mind the 14A in the EAW and start, kind of explicitly tying some of those things to how they might help to answer the questions in here. So again, 14A is usually pretty general. Certainly there are things in MCE that could help you to identify important aspects of this. But 14B, describing rare features such as state listed species, MBS sites, native plant communities, etc. MCE can help with that. The Natural Heritage Review can help with that. And of course, 14B does ask for the MCE project number, the letter number you'll get when you get the letter to and attach the letter to this. C is discussing how those rare features may be impacted. And again, MCE hopefully can help you to do some determination on that. There may be some information in the letter that also helps, but often this is something you'll want to be looking, you or a consultant or whoever is doing this, will want to be looking at the area and determining, okay, this is what we're doing. This may impact this wetland this way, or may impact that native plant community that's mapped in our project area this way. And then D, identifying measures that will be taken to avoid, minimize, or mitigate. The natural heritage review letters will have these in there. They will always, I guess, unless you get that no comments, you'll have some measures in there that will be recommendations to minimize impacts or avoid impacts. And I'm going to show just a couple of those up here. So here's an example. This is kind of our standard comments, or at least some of our standard comments. If there is an MBS site that is nearby, these are again recommendations. We hope people can do what they can. These are important ecological sites, but they are just recommendations. Basically, avoid the site if possible, or as much as possible. Leave a buffer. Don't bring in any weed seeds or things on equipment, tires or scoops or anything. And this will again be in the letter. So some avoidance, mitigation, or minimization measures down here. And then if there is a state listed threatened or endangered species that we believe may be impacted, then you'll get some avoidance measures to help you confirm avoidance of take. Take is prohibited by state law, with some exceptions that I'm not going to get into, but there are exceptions to that. But so we'll give you some measures that will confirm that you are avoiding take. If you can avoid, for turtles, Blanding's turtles, avoiding some overwintering habitats. This is a subset of the things we might give you, but you'll have, again, some ways that we're saying you can help to avoid, minimize, or mitigate impacts to turtles. And then the last thing, I want to make sure we get some important caveats out here. The letters are good for 1 year. The reviews are good for 1 year. That's from the issuance date to the beginning of ground disturbance in an area. So the project doesn't need to be done. If you have, again, started grading or, cut trees, if you're, I don't know, putting in a power line or something, that's what you need to do to clear the area. It's just until the ground disturbance has begun. So you don't need to worry about a long project needing multiple letters during the life of the project. The letters are valid for the project as described to the reviewers. So if the boundary changes, if the impacts change materially or potential impacts change materially, then that letter is no longer valid and you can pretty easily request a new one. And then also letters are subject to change if new information becomes known. This is not common, but it is still possible that new records of rare species are suddenly found out. We've written the letter, and then before the EAW is done, there's a new record that's right within the potential project area. Then the letter may need to be modified, but again, that's fairly rare. And these second and third points are, specifically the third point is why the first point is there. They're valid for 1 year because we do get new information continuously. DNR and other people are out collecting data every field season that gets processed, entered into NHIS. And so if your NHIS layers are 2, 3, 4 years old, you may be missing, you are missing a number of records. And so we don't want people using really old letters or old NHIS layers. And then the final caveat is that this is our state review process. It does not cover federal species. They have a different list of species. They have a different process. I just want to, again, be very clear that that's a separate thing that we're not involved in really at all. But you still need to make sure you take care of whatever requirements the feds might have. And that's a quick review of MCE and the Natural Heritage Review process. I've tried to leave some time for questions here. I don't know, I guess they'll be popping up in the chat.
Yeah, we have two options
Okay.
for having questions. You can raise your hand and we'll call on you. You can also enter a question into the chat and we will be monitoring the chat. Jim, I'd like to start our question session with just a very basic question about how the DNR does data classification. Can you explain a little bit about what kind of information is considered public versus the type of information that is non-public? Um, and then reiterate to how you get each of those in through NHIS.
Yeah. So non-public is it's it's really just, at least in my world, it's really just the rare species observations. Uh, they're kept non-public for a lot of reasons, but that's the only thing that if you get that license, that's really the only difference that you're going to get, which is important for project planning. But the public data is everything else: is the calcareous fen locations, the MBS sites, native plant communities, potential rare native plant community or rare natural communities, excuse me. So basically everything else is going to be available in MCE for any user. It's just those rare plants and animals that you need a license to see.
Perfect. Thank you. Um, since we don't have other questions yet, I'm just going to ask a whole bunch if you're
Sure.
ready for it. Well, I'll start out with my next one. You mentioned that there is a federal process, and I know this isn't your place to recommend, but if we were going to give someone a search term to find out how they are able to access the federal species information, where would we send people?
IPAC, which is, oh, I always forget what that stands for. Information planning. I shouldn't even try to make it up, but there's a federal website that you go to. If you search IPAC, Federal Review or something, you'll find it. And they walk you through a series of questions and get a determination, what potential impacts you might have and stuff. So yeah, it's a pretty easy process to start. We are not really involved at all. We will maybe alert people to that process, but yeah, we don't really get involved in doing it or anything.
Perfect. It looks like we do have a question in chat from a fellow DNR staff, Mr. Wilson. It says, did you say the letter was valid for 1 year from the date it was received or from groundbreaking?
1 year from when the letter was issued, so they'll all have a date on them. And then um, you don't need to complete the project within that 1 year. You just need to start ground disturbance or something. So, again, if you're doing a house or a solar project or something, you need to start clearing that land or something, but you don't need to finish that project. You don't need to get all the arrays up or anything within the 1 year.
On a personal note, Jim, it looks like MCEA has like a ton of features. The amount of information that's available it's incredible. If you had to choose something that was like a bonus content, the most overlooked thing that you think everyone should dig into or be aware of, can you share with us, like from your personal opinion, what that feature might be?
Yes, I can. I guess I would encourage people to maybe start looking at the getting into some of the search features, so that conservation planning report, again, it's a set distance that users can't change. But if you want to start getting into searching for features, then you can define your own areas. You can search, again, all the layers are available here. All the layers that are below are available here. And so it's given me all of the calcareous fens. In this case, this is just all the fens in the state. But if I want to say, well, really, I'm interested, where are they in relation to my potential project area? There are none within, but I can add a buffer. Let's say it always defaults to half a mile for some reason. Well, let's type in here. Let's say within 4 miles. And then in this case, it's that same one that popped up in the conservation planning report. But if you change that distance, you may get more or fewer of those. So this spatial search feature, pretty easy, I think, to get into. And it allows you that flexibility to kind of, make your own conservation planning report. You don't have to use our preset distances. You can put whatever you want in there. And then you can, the Teams thing is in the way here. Okay. So you can then also export any of these to CSV or a PDF to, one isn't that hard, but say you had 20 or 30, you can export them and have a list, again, kind of creating your own conservation planning report. So this is like, step 2 or level 2 of getting into MCE, but I think this search for features thing can really add a lot of utility to what you can do in here.
Thanks, Jim. That's super helpful. We have a couple more questions coming in through the chat, so I'm going to read 2 of them to you. First up, we have attendee Susan Mayer. She asks, is it helpful if project proposers and consultants provide a letter summarizing any records identified via licensed NHIS data when they're submitting a request for the Natural Heritage Review?
If it's just a list, that's not going to add really very much because we do that same search anyway, just as part of our standard process. If they, can say that here's the list, but we know our project, again, let's say we're going to avoid wetlands for whatever reason. And so we think the impact to these species, or let's say there's a lake nearby that has some rare fish in it, and they say we're going to avoid any impacts to the lake. And so we don't think it's going to harm, these species, these shiners or whatever. That can help in our interpretation because we say, oh, okay, they said they're not going to impact it. Their project description and maps kind of back that up. So we don't need to really put a lot of effort into that kind of review. So if there's some interpretation they want to add to that, that can help. Yeah.
Thank you. And then next we have a question from Layla Bunji. If we submitted an NHIS request, receive a letter, and records were updated after the fact, but within a year of submitting it, will we be notified?
No. So if you get the letter, well, I should say not necessarily. The people who receive letters, you don't have to go like back and check if there's an update or anything. If there's any reason to update it, we will notify you. Again, that's quite rare. It does happen, so I wanted to bring it up, but it's quite rare. And the proposers don't have to go and double check that is this still valid or whatever. We will reach out if it's something that we are aware of and deem necessary.
Sounds great. Yeah, and we do not have any more questions in the chat at this time, but we have a couple minutes left in the hour if folks want to put any other questions or even if they're general information about environmental review and the connections to this work. Any questions are welcome in the chat.
And also open it up to EQB staff too, if you can think of any questions that this presentation has triggered for you, of course. Jim, if people need to get a hold of you to ask more questions, to follow up on some information specific to their letter, how do they get a hold of you?
There's my email. I am James. Make sure you include the F. Otherwise, a Jim Drake and MnDOT is going to get a bunch of emails. But yeah, email is obviously the best. You can go to our website, and if you enter Natural Heritage Review Minnesota, you'll go to our website, and then that has our staff, myself, Lisa Joel, Molly Barrett, all the staff that work on Natural Heritage Review stuff. So you can see our emails and phone numbers there too.
Hey Jim, could you quick touch on the licensing of the NHIS review? And I believe when I worked at a county, we forgot to renew our license, and so it fell off. I think there's a question here asking as well about the costs of the licenses and reviews. Could you give a quick overview on some of those
Yeah.
pieces?
Yep. So again, licenses are basically for the rare species, and then you'll get some extra muscle data as well, some non-rare muscle data. The licenses are good for, so again, it's a contract. You need somebody with signing authority from your organization to sign this. They are good for 2 years, and you can get data delivered. You can either get GIS files, ARC files, or you can get access to the rare species within MCE, or you can get both. There's a slight cost to get both. It's like another, I forgot, $100-ish, somewhere in that area. And the cost for, again, it's county by county basis. So you can request any counties from one to all of them, all 87, I guess we have. And it's roughly $400 for one county and somewhere 3,500 plus for all counties. And so, whatever counties you might need in that area, or within that range, you can request.
We do have another question in the chat. Is a project still required to obtain a natural heritage letter from DNR if NHIS data from a valid current license is used to identify rare natural features?
So my group is not, the Natural Heritage Review group does not require people to do natural heritage reviews for anything. That's not in our authority. We just do the reviews if they're requested. Again, the reviews are requested for a number of reasons, and I'm not qualified to say when you have to do one and when you don't. That's for permitters or other people to do. So sorry, I can't really give you a good answer there.
Sure. And that's a great question. The EQB staff have addressed this a couple of different times. It is written as a requirement on the EAW form, but EQB staff do not believe that that would be a legally enforceable thing. However, it was written in there because it is a best practice and a recommendation that ensures that there's a wide variety of data from the state of Minnesota that's checked. But again, the RGU owns the EAW form. That is their information, and they can use whatever information they want to use. Again, it's on them to make sure that it is complete as possible. And the historic creators of the form believed that the best way to do that was through the NHIS review. But again, that is up to the RGU ultimately. So thank you, Benjamin. That's a great question. And Mary, I see you left a note about Conservative offers fantastic tools for early scoping to communicate with proposers. If you want to talk a little bit more about what you meant there, feel free to come off of mute and discuss anything that you want to. We'd love to hear it, but no pressure. That's what the chat is for. And then we're going to wait just a few more moments to see if we can shake out any more questions that folks might have.
And I guess I'll add on to that early coordination, or not early coordination, but early planning. That is one, again, I was kind of gearing or focusing the things I was saying a little bit more to the EAW, but we do hope that MCE is used for exactly that purpose. You can, in that example I had first, that the eastern third of that little rectangle I drew was a lot of wetlands. So maybe a proposer can see, oh, we should think of what we're going to do there. Wetlands are going to have different requirements, different impacts. So we do hope people use it exactly to look at potential impacts and maybe modify what they're going to do, or just think a little bit more about what to do in certain areas. So it's a desired use that we have for MCE.
Perfect. We'll wait just a little bit more. Certainly, we have the chat available, the hand raise function. But with that, I want to thank you, Jim, for being here, being present and giving us this information, providing your contact information as well. I feel like Minnesota is lucky to have professionals that are both knowledgeable, approachable, and all these interfaces that we can use to access the information. So again, thank you so much for being here. And certainly, if there are any other folks that want to ask any additional questions, you may do so. With that, thank you so much for being here, everyone. And we'll end this portion of the webinar, but remain on the line if you want to add any pointed questions. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.